Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. So today is a quick introduction into web scraping with Puppeteer. If you enjoy this kind of content, please consider subscribing, and let's get right into it. So if you're not familiar with what web scraping is essentially a way to manipulate and extract data from websites, usually using software. So Puppeteer is a Node library, so it works with Node.js, and it allows you to do exactly that. It allows you to manipulate the browser, usually Chrome or Chromium, to do whatever you might usually do, normal kind of day-to-day, but it allows you to do it all programmatically written in code in software. And it uses something called headless browser as well, which basically means you don't actually see the window, the Chrome instance itself, but it just kind of does it in the background. So why would you want to web scrape, or why do you need to use Puppeteer at all? So there's a few reasons on the website here: generating screenshots, PDFs, server-side rendering, automating submissions of forms, etc. There's quite a few reasons there. The main things I've used it for is automated UI testing. So you kind of build an application, you ship it, and then you want software to basically open up your application, fill out the different forms and check that the data is right. So that's one thing that Puppeteer can help with. One of the examples we're going to look at today is basically checking prices on Amazon. If you might be looking out for an item on a shop and they don't have an API that you can kind of nicely call programmatically, so you might have a web scraper to just check the price of that item every now and again, and basically let you know when it's on discount, or it might just even order it for you. So that's what we're going to have a look into today. Let's get right into the code. So I've just instantiated a brand new Node project. I've just done that running npm init-y, so that just starts up a new Node project. And then in the package.json, I've added two scripts, one for price check and one for screenshot. So the first one is just to get you familiar with how Puppeteer works, and then we'll build out the price check script just after that. Note here, I'm just playing around with the type modules, but you can stay with CommonJS just in case you notice the imports. So I've got the Puppeteer GitHub here on the right, and to get started is as simple as running npm install Puppeteer. There's also the option of using Puppeteer core. Now these two are exactly the same. I think pretty much the only difference is Puppeteer ships an actual instance of Chrome or Chromium with it, so that way you don't need to kind of run it on an existing browser. But if you're just kind of either building a library, or if you want to use it with an existing browser, you can use Puppeteer core, and I think that's basically the difference there. So it's a bit more lightweight. So in terms of usage, I would recommend checking out the documentation. So documentation resources on the GitHub page. It's basically got everything you need to know. It's actually quite good documentation here, but we'll get into it in the example. So let's have a look at how Puppeteer works in general. So I've got my screenshot JS file here, and this is one of the examples on their documentation, so you can have a look. So we're just importing Puppeteer, and we're just going to define a function called screenshot. And this is async function, and we're going to call this towards the end. So the first line we're going to do is we're essentially launching Puppeteer. We're defining an instance of a browser. So this will basically launch the Chromium browser. And then using that browser, you can create new pages, create new tabs. You can, check the existing tabs. Each page is essentially a tab, and now you have an instance of a page. So now with the page, you can basically do whatever you could do in a normal browser. So in this case, we're going to tell it, hey, go to Amazon. And typically, one of the things you want to do is you want to tell it to go to Amazon, and then you basically want to tell it to wait until things are loaded. And there's a few different ways to do this. Within the goto function, there's an options block, and you can pass wait until key here, and you can see there's a few different options here. Loaded, document loaded, so this is actually hooking into the lifecycle of the page, and then you have network idle 0 and 2, and these two basically means this will wait until there are 0 network calls for, I think it's 500 milliseconds, and the second one here will wait until there's maximum of 2 calls. And the difference between these two is one is basically more suited towards single page applications where you still have fetching going on, and one is more geared towards server side rendered items. So I'm just going to stick with network idle 2 because I think this is better for the server side rendered, which is basically what Amazon have here. Now that we're in the page, we can start basically manipulating it and doing things. So we'll have a look at that in a second in the price check. In this one, we're just going to use page.screenshot, and we're going to give it a path, example.png. So these methods, they come from Puppeteer. This is all part of the Puppeteer API. And then what we can do finally is we can close the browser. And you can notice that these are all kind of asynchronous functions. So we have the await keyword beforehand. So all this is going to do is open up Amazon, take a screenshot, and close it. So final thing we're going to do is just call the function, and that should be it. So if I just hit run here, you can just see that's going to be running for a moment or two. And once that's done, There we go. We can come back on the left here, and if I double click on this example PNG, you can see that there's a screenshot of the Amazon website, and you can see it's cut off here. There is a default width and height, which is 800 by 600, I think, and yeah, you can manipulate that as well, but for the most part we don't need to see anything because it's headless by default, and we'll see how to twig that for debugging in the next example. So that's kind of the fundamentals. Let's move on to the price check. So for the price check example, we're going to start off in the exact same way, getting a browser, a page, and then we're going to the URL. So I've just extracted this out because we're going to be changing this soon. Right now the URL is just amazon.co.uk, and then we're just calling the function. So of course we need to add a bit of logic here to do what we needed to, but what I thought we'd look into first is, I said earlier on, this is running into headless, so that's why we didn't see an instance of the browser showing up earlier on when we took the screenshot. But what we can do is we can add an options to this launch function, and we can just pass in headless, and by default of course that's true, so we can say, hey, I don't want this to be headless. And now if I run the price check function here, and if I just leave that for a moment, you can see there's this instance of Chromium that's been brought up with the specific dimensions, and it's just opened up Amazon. You can see it's opened up a new page, so I had a default page, opened up a new page, went to amazon.co.uk, and then it's just stopped there, or because we've not closed off the browser, we've not done anything. But that's basically how you might want to go about debugging, right? So if you're debugging and you're getting stuck, you want to see what state the world is in, you can just basically make sure it's headless is false and check it that way. So let's have a quick look at what we can do. So typically when you're web scraping, there's a few things you might want to do. If you think about what do you do when you're on a website, you're either going to be typing something, clicking something, or reading something, reading data, right? That's the three things I'll go over now. And if we open up the inspector tools here and we go to console, you can pretty much do this all in JavaScript already. Of course, you can go to the browser, you have access to the document, and then you can select specific parts of the document. For example, if I go over to this input here, I can see it's got an ID of 2-tab search text box. So I can copy that ID. Alternatively, usually you can copy selector. There we go. And then I can go to the console and I can type in document.query. I think it's selector. There we go. And just pass in your selector just like that. And then now you have, you basically have access to that box. And now you can just basically manipulate it in JavaScript the way you usually do. So I can, I think I can just update the value to be, something, hit enter. You can see the value is there. If that was a, button, I'd be able to call the onClick function onto it. And of course you could read the inner text, etc. So if I just keep it at that, I think it's just going to show me the, the value. So, you can manipulate anything on the HTML page using JavaScript on the browser. Now what we want to do is basically do something similar, but over here in Puppeteer, and that's exactly what we're going to do here. So if we wanted to do the exact same thing, type something, what we could do is we always start off with a page. So page, we've got a bunch of helper methods here. One of the ones to note is if you ever kind of get stuck on the Puppeteer side, you can always just use the, I think it's the evaluate function, right? And the evaluate function just takes in a callback, and within this evaluate function, you basically have access to the DOM. This gets evaluated or it gets executed within the browser environment. So I could basically take this, copy and paste it inside here. And yeah, let's just run this. And this should just work fine. So this should open up a browser, new tab, load everything. And once it's loaded, it should just set the text box to something. Now, although you could do this for most things, Puppeteer basically has a few helper methods to make life easier for you. So what you can do instead, you can do page.type, and it takes in the same thing. So we pass in a selector. Oops. So let me just take this selector here. There we go. So we can just take that selector and then we can just give it a text to type something. There we go. And then same things for, same goes for clicking. So if I wanted to click something, I would do page.click. And what we can do here is let's just take this button again. We've got the ID, we copy that, and click, it just takes in an ID. And this is just, again, a selector. So that's an ID. So I pass in a hash there. And now what this should do is basically, I'm going to stop this instance. We run it. It should just open up Amazon, search for something, and hit basically click the button here and actually search for it. So if we just see if that works out, there we go. So if I accept the cookies here, you can see that it searched for something. And yeah, that's basically typing and clicking. So in our example here, what we want to do instead is we actually want to read some data. So what we're going to do is we're just going to click on a random product here. So let's just go for the Alexa. go for the echo dot. So this is the product page. Let's just say I want to monitor this. I want to check when, I want to, check for a discount. So I want to buy it if it goes below a certain amount. And, let's assume they don't have an API. So what I want to do is I'm going to copy this URL because this is the URL I want to go to. We don't need to kind of go through the searching and, etc. But, it's there if we need it. And then what I want to do is basically I want to look for where's the data on the page that I need. So I know that it's going to be, I can see the price here, the price here. I could use either one. I'm just going to see this one here. There we go. So this one's got an ID. Usually if something's got an ID, it just means it's easily searchable. Now I'm just going to copy this selector. Now one thing I would kind of caveat is, although the ID should be unique on a page, I wouldn't always trust that. So it might just be worth checking. So you could use document.querySelector all, for example, and just make sure that you've got one result, because although IDs should be unique on a page, they aren't always, this isn't always the case, and that might basically, break the application that you're building. So what we're going to do here is, we're going to use page again, and we have this kind of $ selector type thing. So if you're used to, or if you've ever played around with jQuery, you might be used to this. It's basically going to bring you back an element with that selector. So this basically just brings you back an element with that selector, and you can combine this with the eval that we saw earlier on, the evaluation. And what this basically allows you to do, and this is one of the things I use most of the time, is pass in a selector. And as a second argument, we want to evaluate some sort of function within the browser. So in this case, I want to read the inner text. So what this function does is it basically gives you the element that it found. In this case, actually, we can just call this element. So this is the returned element. And you can just return whatever you want from here. So I'm just going to return the element dot inner text. So I think that should work fine. I'm just going to format that. So basically what we want is, and again, we can just test it out here quickly just to make sure it works. Paste that in, and then you're going to do dot inner text. It's going to return 39.99, and that's all we need. So if I return, or if I assign that to a variable, so make sure I have that as a price, then what I'll do is I will close the browser just to make sure everything's tidied up, and then I will return the price at that point. So let's return price, and that should all work fine if I can spell. So return price, there we go. And what we're going to do after I call the getPrice method, then again, this is a promise, so I'm just going to console.log, right? So I'm just going to log that out, and I think that should be fine. So I'm just going to remove headless here and stop the existing one running, and I'm just going to run it one more time. So if I run price check, it should go away, go to the page, fetch the text, and just print it out. And there we go. So that took a bit longer than I'd expect, but yeah, there we go. It's printed out, 39.99. That's exactly how we need. And now you have access to this value in your Node environment. So at this point, you can have, you can basically do whatever you can with normal Node environment. You can run this as a cron job, and then take this value, check some logic, check if it's under a certain amount, send an email, send a text, or you can even just fill out the entire form and go ahead and click. Whereas this, click the buy now button. Basically, you can do whatever you want. So one thing I forgot to mention earlier on, which is actually also quite useful, is another API that they have, which is await page.waitForSelector. So although here we have waited for basically the network to die out, sometimes you don't have that luxury. Sometimes you click on a button and you want to wait for a selector, something that you know is going to be on the page to be there. What you can do there is basically wait for selector. So what this does is, again, you pass it some sort of selector, and you can it will wait a certain timeout which you can specify for that selector to come into play. And once it comes into play, it will basically, it will return the element itself. So in addition to using this network idle, I could have also waited for this selector here. So I would basically say wait for that element to be available, and then I could do element dot evaluate, and so on and so forth, basically evaluate it in a similar way that we have here basically. So that's just something that's worth noting. So I think that's everything that I wanted to cover in the scope of this video. So this has been kind of a very basic introduction. You can see here on the right, the API is quite big, so you can actually do quite a lot with this. But as far as the absolute basics go, this is going to cover you the majority of the time. So I hope you could learn something from that, and thank you very much for watching. Have a good day, and I'll see you in the next one.